What good evening, friends. Let us be very still for a moment. In this hush, the presence that lives us becomes audible. What if the most liberating truth Joel S. Goldsmith offered was precisely the one he would not speak aloud? Why would a teacher who gave so freely veil something so vital? Not to deny you, but to keep the holy from becoming a technique. Words can point, only silence can impart. Tonight, we will walk into that silence together. Why he kept certain things sacred, how the one presence and one power frees us from trying to use truth as a personal tool, and the quiet inner practice he carried between the lines, where prayer shifts from asking to beholding, and healing is no longer a performance but a presence. If this resonates, like the video, comment a symbolic number, a 111 777 or 108 to mark your intent, and subscribe so we can keep walking this infinite way together. Stay close, because in a moment I will name the doorway he would not hand his students until the silence had given it first. And once you see it, you may never approach prayer, supply, or healing quite the same way again. Here is the doorway he guarded the holy so it would not be degraded into a method. The moment the mind grabs a sacred principle and says, I will use this to get to heal, to fix, the presence withdraws from sight. Not because it is gone, but because the personal will have stepped between the light and the window. Joel knew the human longing for outcomes. He knew how subtle the temptation is to turn revelation into ritual, realization into recipe. So he hid the levers the mind would pull until the heart had learned to bow. He would not arm you with phrases to throw at conditions. He refused to give you numbers of repetitions, timings, or mental arguments. Why? Because God is not a power to be used. God is the one presence that, when realized, dissolves the very premise of two powers. The minute you try to use truth, you confess an opposite that must be overcome. That is the birth of sorcery, not spirituality. The holy cannot be managed. It is beheld. We do not make demonstrations, we witness grace demonstrating itself. Guarding the holy meant training the inner ear before the tongue, silence before speech, receptivity before thought. He would say, retire within, become still, and let the word announce itself. If a scripture rises, let it rise. If it does not, do not force it. You are not summoning a power, you are relaxing into the presence that is already the life law and substance of all that appears. In that quiet, fear loses its breath. In that quiet, appearances are impersonalized as flickers on the glass, not powers opposed to the light. When students pressed for technique, he redirected them to principle. One presence, one power, one life. Dwell there. Touch it, and conditions reorder of their own accord. Miss it, and all the affirmations in the world become mere mental noise. He guarded the holy by refusing to satisfy curiosity at the expense of consecration. He knew the name cannot be handed to the personal sense without being turned into a charm. So he taught how to be a transparency, less self, more surrender, less insisting, more listening. This guarding was love. It protected the student from the karmic boomerang of using spirituality as a tool of personal desire, and it protected the sanctity of prayer from becoming commerce. When the heart is ripe, the same word you heard 100 times becomes a living word. When the self is quiet, a single breath of inner recognition accomplishes more than hours of mental hammering. You will find that true practice is not doing, but yielding, not claiming power, but ceasing to concede power to what never had it. Then the holy guards you, and life moves as an unforced benediction, without strain, without drama, without the itch to prove or persuade. Practice becomes privacy. You close the door, you listen, you let assurance ripen before word is spoken. You do not explain your prayer, you embody it. You do not argue with appearances, you rest in the secret place until the pressure of presence discloses harmony of itself. In this way the holy is guarded not by secrecy alone, but by fidelity to the invisible source from which every true word must come. From fidelity to the invisible source flows the practice silence before speech. The first movement is not to declare, argue, or affirm, it is to listen. Before the tongue is trusted, the inner ear must awaken. This ear is not of cartilage. It is the quiet faculty that hears the word where words are not. In that hush, you are not manufacturing thoughts about God. You are yielding to the awareness of the presence that is already here. You are not building a prayer, you are letting prayer pray itself. Enter simply. Close the door, literal or inward, and set down the wish to get something. Let the breath soften without managing it. Let the mind surface its worries and let them pass like fish through clear water. If a verse arises, be still and know that I am God. Lay it gently in the heart and then return to listening. No repetition to hypnotize, no effort to produce results. Listening is the result, a felt receptivity that does not grasp. When you notice striving, smile and stop. Silence is not a task, it is a welcome. In this receptivity, something subtle begins. Silence becomes alive. The atmosphere warms, the inner room brightens, not sensory but certain. A tenderness, a weightless authority, a soft assurance that needs no proof. This is the word making itself known. Do not rush to translate it into sentences. Do not seize it for later use. Let it complete its own circuit in you. Sometimes a single phrase will be given. I am here. Fear not. And that is sufficient. Sometimes nothing at all comes but the serene knowing. Both are the same gift. Practice in brief intervals, many times a day. 3 minutes before the day begins, 30 seconds before a call, a breath before speaking to a troubled friend. Silence goes before speech the way dawn goes before day. If you must speak, let speech be the overflow of what silence has said. Then your words carry the tone of presence rather than the clang of personal conviction. They will be few, and they will be gentle, and yet they will cut through fear like light through fog. When appearances shout, pain lack, conflict, do not argue. Retire within. Lay the picture at the altar without analysis. Refuse the reflex to fix. Let the inner ear tune to the one presence, one power. Wait beyond the counting of time. The felt assurance is the healing atmosphere. It dissolves the hypnotic belief in two powers without a verbal fight. If no assurance comes, remain honest and quiet. Even your willingness to wait unarmed is prayer. Scripture writings and inspired passages have their place, but in this way read a line, then listen twice as long as you read. Let the pauses preach. The wisdom is in the interval. Over days and weeks, you will notice a new instinct. You reach for silence the way a child reaches for a hand in a crowded place. Decisions simplify. Reaction slows. Love becomes less an emotion and more an atmosphere. You find yourself speaking less to convince and more to witness what has already been announced within. And that instinct ushers you into the core principle. One presence, no opposite. The shift is quiet but radical. Instead of marshalling truth to defeat error, you begin to see there is nothing opposite to God to defeat. All the inner strain comes from the hidden assumption of two powers, a good to invoke and an evil to resist. The moment you accept two powers, you have left the holy ground of realization and entered the arena of mental combat. But awareness of the one does not fight, it beholds. It is the light that reveals the unreality of the shadow without discussing it. This is not optimism, and it is not denial. It is spiritual clarity. Denial argues with appearances, realization exposes their lack of law. In the presence of one infinite life, what second life could threaten? In the presence of one infinite law, what counter law could bind? In the presence of one infinite substance, what lack could be actual? Two-power belief is mesmerism, hypnotic conviction that an opposite exists. The practice is to awaken, not to wrestle with a dream. Scripture whispers this in many ways. I am the Lord, and beside me there is none else. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God. The Lord is one. The point is not religious, it is metaphysical. There is not God and something else. When the inner ear receives this, fear loosens, because fear is always the echo of two-power belief. You stop reaching for a bigger spiritual hammer and start resting in the fact that the only presence is already here, whole, indivisible, self, enforcing. So when a condition presents itself, pain, lack, conflict, you do not mobilize counter-thoughts. Retire within and acknowledge one presence. Not to change the picture, but to abide where no opposite is recognized. Sit in that holy refusal to grant reality to a second power. If a phrase is given, let it be simple. 1. I am. Besides me, none. Then listen. The assurance that flows is not personal courage, it is the felt weight of reality. Often the picture fades of itself, sometimes it remains a while. Either way, you are not bargaining with it. You are not conceding it a status it does not possess. Notice how this alters speech and action. You are less quick to condemn or to fix, because condemnation and fixing presume an opposite that must be conquered. You become a witnessing presence. Words, when they come, are free of strain. They do not claim power, they honor the power. Even in practical affairs, money, work, family, decisions begin to rest on inner peace rather than outer pressure. You find yourself saying no to hurry and yes to order, not as a strategy, but as the overflow of one law harmonizing details without frenzy. There is also a tenderness in this. Without an opposite to fear or hate, the heart softens. You can look at a so-called enemy and see an impersonal suggestion at work, not a second self with a second power. You do not collude with wrongdoing, but you refuse to grant it the dignity of reality. This deprives it of fuel. Resist not evil. Ceases to sound like passivity. It becomes clarity. Do not energize the phantom by wrestling it. Stand still and behold the salvation that is simply the visibility of what is. When one is realized, the many finds its place as expression, not as contenders for power. In that realization, the atmosphere shifts without argument, and life answers to the tone of the presence you are acknowledging. From there you begin to see why Joel insisted, give no power to error. Impersonalize appearances. What confronts you as pain, lack, conflict, or injustice is not a person wielding power, nor a condition endowed with law. It is a suggestion, an impersonal pressure arising from the universal belief in two powers. The moment you stamp it as, my disease, their malice, that scarcity, you fasten it to a self and breathe life into a shadow. Impersonalization loosens that knot. You are not ignoring the picture, you are declining to confer selfhood, substance, cause, or law upon it. This is why he warned against personalizing either sin or disease. If you make it personal, you either blame and hate, or you fear and defend. Both reactions are worship of a second power. Judge not according to appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Righteous judgment does not excuse wrongdoing. It sees through the mask to the absence of independent power behind the mask. In practice, it sounds like this within. There is no power in effect. All power is in cause, and cause is God. No person is an instrument of evil. A universal mesmerism claims presence, but has none. Consider the common scenes of a day. A harsh email arrives, the impulse is to strike back or to shrink. Pause, impersonalize, no power to the appearance. Let the inner assurance arise before you type a word. Often the heat disappears from your body first, then from your reply, and sometimes from the situation itself. A diagnosis looms. Instead of arguing with the report, retire within and recognize there is no law of disease acting on, in or through the life that is God expressed. The body is not a power center, spirit is the substance of form. When you refuse to grant the claim a personal identity, you deprive it of the fuel of fear. This is compassionate work. Impersonalization ends condemnation. You can hold a firm boundary without hate, correct an error without shaming a self, make amends without self-loathing. Even your own missteps are seen as suggestions believed, not identities lived. You accept responsibility, you make corrections, but you do not enthrone guilt as a second God. Sin is not a self, it is a belief. When belief is exposed as baseless, the self is free to serve. In healing ministry, Joel would not let students treat a case. He taught them to behold. The patient is not a patient, the Christ is the identity. The condition has no law, no cause, no continuity. Do not wrestle with symptoms. Do not seek a method. Rest until the felt assurance, no power to error, establishes itself. Sometimes a simple inner word arises, none. That is enough. From that altitude, words or acts you are led to take will carry authority without force. Impersonalization also corrects the subtle pride of being the fixer. If error is impersonal and powerless, you are not the hero who defeats it, you are the transparency through which reality shows its already present harmony. This relieves strain. You stop trying to make something happen. You stop bargaining for outcomes. You become available to what is true, and availability is the channel of grace. Notice too how the news of the world changes tone. Reports of conflict, contagion, scarcity, without impersonalization. They hook you into fear or rage. With it you can pray without polarity. No power to error does not mean withdrawal from human action. It means action unpoisoned by hate. You write, vote, serve, give, without feeding the very hypnotism you hope to heal. In family life it looks like steady warmth under pressure. In business it looks like principle before profit, and paradoxically, wiser profit. In the secret place it looks like a quiet heart that does not tremble before pictures, because it knows where power actually is from that knowing. The question of supply shifts. Instead of, how do I get? It becomes, how do I yield? Grace is not a currency you earn. It is the spontaneous activity of the one being itself as your sufficiency. Supply is not piles of things. It is the living current of God appearing as ideas. Right action, right place, right relationships, right timing. When the heart ceases clutching, forms begin to arrange themselves under a law you do not manage. The measure you experience is the measure of realization, not the intensity of effort. Begin where we always begin, retire within. Do not pray for dollars or clients or outcomes. That would be to enthrone channels as source. Rest and acknowledge I and the Father are one. Therefore all that the Father is, I am. All that the Father has is the life and law of this moment. Let the sense of need soften in the warmth of that recognition. Wait until the hush grows tangible. In that atmosphere, thought quiets, breath evens, and assurance, not argument, becomes your wealth. Then move into your day with the lightest touch. Refuse outlining. Do not tell spirit the form it should take. Do not mandate the who, the when, the how. Your employer, client, platform, market are not sources. They are shapes grace may use and change without warning. Bless every channel and lean upon none. If a nudge arises, write the note, make the call, finish the neglected work. Do it simply, free of anxiety. If no nudge comes, do the next right ordinary task with consecration and no hurry. Notice how fear tries to personalize lack, my bills, my slow month, my late payment. Impersonalize it as a suggestion with no law. Lack has no cause in God and therefore no continuity. This is not an excuse for irresponsibility. It is the spiritual ground on which responsibility becomes clear and unburdened. From that ground you may be led to prune expenses, to forgive a debt, to renegotiate a term, to release a project that belongs to yesterday. These practical adjustments are not strategies to get. They are the natural orderliness of grace expressing as your affairs. Giving belongs here, but understood rightly. We do not give to buy favor from God. We give because grace is a flowing nature and we refuse to dam it with fear. Give as you are led, money, time, expertise, attention, without trumpets and without superstition. The gift recognizes source everywhere and frees you from the hypnosis that possession is safety. Gratitude, too, becomes not thank you for the thing, but thank you for being what appears as this. Gratitude keeps the channel transparent because it keeps attention on cause. Remember, take no thought. The lilies neither toil nor spin, yet are clothed. This is not passivity but confidence in one law. 2. Take no thought means no anxious scheming, not no thoughtful work. You work, but as the branch lives the vine. You plan, but without fear's hand on the pen. You meet obligations, but you do not worship them as gods. Often you will find an idea arrives in the quiet that becomes the vehicle of supply a new service, A simple efficiency, a reconnection long avoided, a humbling apology that restores flow in a relationship that was damning your good. Let the idea ripen in silence before you act, then act cleanly, without strain, letting grace determine the measure, the manner, and the moment, so with action purified, where healing appears as beholding, not fixing. Fixing implies a broken thing, a second power to be subdued, a personal agent to perform a cure. Beholding is different. It is the quiet recognition of what eternally is until the hypnotism of what seems to be relaxes and yields. In beholding you do not whose truth upon a condition. You sit in the light until the condition has no claimant left to maintain it. I within do the works. Becomes felt rather than quoted. What the urgency to make something happen dissolves in presence. Enter the secret place as you would for any prayer retire, relinquish the will to cure, and let silence take precedence. Do not collect holy sentences as tools. If a word rises, let it be simple and living. Here, be still, hold no image of a patient improved, no outline of a symptom removed. The moment you picture a preferred outcome, you have left beholding for managing. Instead, recognize the Christ as the identity present where a patient appears, the life that is the only life of body, mind, and circumstance. Wait until the soft assurance comes, weightless, authoritative, without strain. Apply this in the small and the near. A stabbing pain announces itself. The reflex is to grip, to breathe, a technique to banish. Pause. Withdraw attention from the image of a body as cause. Acknowledge one life being itself as this very here. No power in effect, all power in cause. If you are led to place a hand, do it as sacrament, not as leverage, the sign of love, not the instrument of force. Often the clutching fear loosens first. Then the sensation changes of its own accord, as if a dimmer were turned without a hand touching the switch. In conflict, behold rather than correct. Two voices harden at a table. Before crafting arguments, return within. See through names and histories to the one self revealing itself as multiplicity without division. You are not trying to personalities. You are recognizing there are no independent personalities to oppose the one. When you speak, let words be few and unhurried. Sometimes the meeting will move on without resolution, yet the heat has dropped out of the room. Sometimes a phrase arrives that opens a window neither side could find by effort. Beholding is also how distance is outgrown. A friend calls from a hospital in another city. You do not send thoughts across miles. You acknowledge omnipresence, know here and there in consciousness. You enter the silence, and if any inner word comes, it is addressed to no place, and every place I am. The work is complete in principle when peace is felt. Forms will show it forth according to their own order, swiftly, gradually, or by re-routing paths you could not have designed. You do not check symptoms to decide if God has been God, you return to gratitude for what is independent of what seems. This posture protects humility. You do not announce yourself a healer or rehearse results as proofs. You keep confidences. You refuse to turn grace into spectacle. Those who ask for help are met with tenderness and clarity. We will be still together. We will witness what is true. We will not wrestle shadows. Sometimes you will be led to practical kindness, food, a ride, a call to a doctor, a boundary lovingly held. These acts are not alternatives to prayer. They are its overflow, as presence interprets itself in forms the moment can receive without adding the tension of personal heroics.